And hello, everyone. I think we are on, and we would like to welcome you and appreciate where you will spend time with us and hear really invaluable knowledge from Jonathan. And Jonathan, welcome, and thank you for being with us with IT Governance Turkey.
Sure, my pleasure.
John Tekit, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, it will be a big pleasure for me. As I mentioned before, I have completed most of course of Jonathan. Now we are hosting him. It will be a big pleasure for us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. You want me to start? Are we ready to go?
Yeah, it's your stage.
Okay,
yeah,
very good.
We will
I'm gonna go ahead.
cover the digital transformation and smart cities. And Jonathan, now we are on you.
Very nice. Very good. Well, I'm delighted to be here with you guys with IT Governance Turkey. I would rather be in Turkey and Istanbul with you, but we will have to sacrifice and just use this virtual platform today. But the good news is it's easy to bring people like me into events like this because I just have to roll out of bed and turn my camera on. I'm ready to teach or to share. Today is a particularly busy day. I'm doing several keynotes today in different parts of the world. So I'll be very busy throughout today in particular. Of course, October and November are big conference months, so I'll be sharing my messages a lot. Well, I'm happy to share some thoughts with participants today. And if you're watching this via video later on, welcome, and I hope this is valuable to you. It could be one of the most important topics of our time. It's certainly economically worth an awful lot to our world, and many of the things I'll talk about this morning will also have an impact on our sort of existentially on our future, because cities are where we're creating a climate emergency, and hopefully it's where we'll try to manage a climate emergency. So I want to take you through this story today. You know, an image like this hopefully is something that isn't, unfortunately, not hopefully, is very common to you. As a person who has spent many years traveling around the world, working with cities and advising cities, you know, I would arrive in a new place and you know, be at the airport and take a taxi or an Uber to my hotel, and invariably, no matter if I was in Asia, Europe, or South America, or Australia, wherever it was, I would likely hit this kind of traffic. Congestion and transportation remain a significant challenge for the world. And in terms of big themes, it's something that you will see in every corner, unfortunately, of the planet. I've only seen less than a handful of cities in the world that don't have this issue. One was in Bergen in Norway about 2 years ago, but they certainly are the exception. As we have developed cities over the last 100 years, and because they have been built in concert with the emergence of the and rapid growth of the automobile, our cities have largely been built around the automobile rather than continuing to be built around people. So cities that are new and creating new infrastructure built for cars, and those older cities like, for example, Istanbul and a lot of European ancient cities have to accommodate the vehicle. Now, cars have been actually a pretty big deal, a positive one. They've transformed the planet. They've completely changed how we move products and services, and they've brought economic opportunity and a tremendous value to a higher quality of life. But they have come at a significant price. You know, the price of damage to the environment the price of accidents. It's remarkable that today, each year, 1.4 million people die in car accidents, 1.4 million per year, and millions of people are injured. And so then there is the consumption of energy that all these cars need. Still, the vast majority of cars in the world are gasoline powered. And as we continue to harvest that from the planet, we're diminishing and damaging our environment. Plus, we're also spewing carbon in great volumes into the atmosphere every single day. So there's a deep connection between the future of cities and how we manage and deal with transportation. And soon I will share with you some of the directions that we're going with that. Now, cities have been successful. They've brought more people out of poverty and extreme poverty than any other human invention. They are the most complex of human endeavors. And as I have alluded to, they are definitely very successful in bringing more opportunity to more people, better access to healthcare, better access to education, and better jobs, and better and more variety of entertainment and just extracurricular activities. But that price again has been large. In order to feed our massive appetite for productivity and products and consumerism, we have built significant industrial infrastructure in and around our cities. And in fact, the World Health Organization will maintain that in the region of 2 million people die directly or indirectly because of just air quality alone, from how we've been powering this exuberance over the last few decades. And part of that again is our mass consumption society. Our consumer society is producing vast amounts of waste, and we haven't done terribly well in how we manage that waste and how we dispose of waste and the waste in which we use. In particular, our love affair with plastic, which again is worth saying is an incredible convenience and has helped us and continues to help us live a modern and progressive life. Now we are paying a price. Now we are paying a price to the environment and to our health, and to the health of animal life and all sorts of flora and fauna. And so, for example, the volume of plastic consumed and disposed of each year is so great that there is a area the size of France in the center of the beautiful Pacific Ocean that is just full of plastic. Imagine the scale of that. Now, if you go out there, you're not going to see, plastic bottles and donut packaging or anything like that. You'll see little beads, very small beads of plastic, because the motion of the ocean breaks the plastic down into these beads. But they're small enough that the fish and the sea life consumes the plastic. And unfortunately, we like to eat those fish, and therefore we are also eating the plastic. And the long-term consequences of what happens when us as humans consume vast amounts of plastic and plastic derivations, the chemical makeup of those, will that bond with our DNA, or is it having even impacts to our health as we go through life? Those things will reveal themselves in the years ahead. Again, our cities have brought more people out of poverty than anything else. In fact, in the years 2008 through 2015, in India alone, cities brought about 200 million people out of extreme poverty into the working and middle classes. That's a phenomenal achievement. for India. And we see that in many developing areas of the world. But it's not serving everyone. In the developed world, here in the United States, there in Turkey, and across Europe and around the world, not everybody is getting an opportunity to participate and glean the benefits of our urban world, of our great cities. And that should not sit easy with us. We need to build our communities such that more people can be included, there can be more equity and equality, and as best we can, make available all the promises of a modern, prosperous, and urban world. Now, the big existential threat, of course, if you believe the scientific consensus, which I do, is that the world is in the grips of a heating. Over the last 100 years, the average temperature of the Earth has increased by 1 degree Celsius, and it's accelerating just in the last few years. We're heading up towards 1.5 degrees Celsius on average. And whilst it might not sound like a lot, you only have to go back just a few degrees and you have the conditions for the ice age that the Earth went through a few thousand years ago. If we go forward a few degrees to 2 degrees and even 3 degrees Celsius, we have a real risk to the sustainability of life on the planet. In the meantime, as the Earth heats up, we have more storms. Storms are stronger, the droughts are longer, the ocean levels are rising and creating a lot of flooding. Now, one alarming statistic is that the about 635 cities around the world are on coastlines, and that represents about almost 1.5 billion people. And so as the coastlines are beginning to flood because of rising sea levels, we will start to see significant damage and risk to life. And so our cities are on the forefront of this climate emergency. And so we'll have to re-architect our coastal cities. It may include things like mitigation. It might include things like moving more inland or moving to higher ground. But we certainly have a significant multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure rework to do in the years ahead. Now, as we get lower down sort of into stuff that's closer to home, you look at a picture like this and you think, yeah, that looks like what I expect city government to look and behave like. And for the most part, it still remains this way. I'm somebody who has been fortunate enough to travel around the world and to visit cities and see how they operate and to help mayors and city managers. And a lot of city life remains quite analog, non-digital. So you find a city room office like this where people they have any number of items to deal with. It could be getting a new driver's license or requesting a birth certificate or maybe requesting a permit for some construction or electrical work. And, there's few of us who actually wake up and say, oh, I can't wait to work with government today. That's an exciting thing to do. And I'm not talking about employees of government. I'm talking about the general public. Do we look forward to it? Is it our, something that is exciting and interesting? And the answer is no. We want to work with government only when we have to, because it's an important part of our world, of course. But it also should be a good experience. And today, in many aspects, it's a non-digital experience. It's primarily for far too many cities and too many services, an analog service. And what makes this interesting is that's all happening in our world, which is going through a digital transformation. When we are in our consumer life or when we're in the private sector, we're getting more and more comfortable, and we expect to have digital interactions with businesses and with how we run our organizations and work in them. When you are working in the private sector or having a private sector experience, this is what you experience. But when you go to the public sector, this is what you experience. There's a significant disconnect there. And so this actually represents opportunity to me. I don't necessarily look at this entirely as a negative. When I look at this, I say, wow, there's so much opportunity to build solutions and to move our cities out of an analog world into a digital world, so that people don't have to go to city buildings and spend all day there or fill out numerous forms. It can all be done just through the convenience of a smartphone or your laptop computer or a smartwatch or some other device, maybe your smart assistant at home, like Google Home or Alexa from Amazon or one of those. So when we look across the different domains of the city opportunity, we don't just see one area. What attracts me largely to the city work that I do and the innovation work in our communities is the diversity of opportunities and the diversity of challenges. And as you can see from this very simple chart, that it, by the way, is by no means inclusive. We're talking about areas such as health, energy, right, mobility, waste, air quality and water quality, and so much more. So if you are an entrepreneur or you work for a company that provides different types of services, you can see that you can either specialize in an area or you can be a generalist, but there is this abundant amount of different domains to be engaged with. Now, I was particularly struck by this data point that was derived just recently. You can see September 28th, so just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Frost & Sullivan, who are a major consulting organization, they did their sort of 2025 projections in a number of industries, and their conclusion was that smart cities represented a $2.4 trillion opportunity by 2025. That's not a number to laugh at. That's a big, significant number, which suggests to us that there's lots of work to do. There's going to be lots of demands, and our cities are going to be very much on the forefront of economic opportunity. So I'd like to transition from sort of the problems, which now should be fairly clear to you in the context of our cities. The future of our cities is a subject of life or death, right? We can't say that about a lot of things, but what's absolutely clear to us as we look at COVID-19, for example, a large part of the crisis is happening in our cities, whether it's the health consequences, which are big, but also the economic and social consequences, given that so many of us now live in a city context. So the range of challenges and the importance of cities in our lives now and into the future cannot be trivialized or underestimated. So let's have a look at some ideas here and put in context how we might approach these things at a very high level. One example that I particularly like is an experiment that was tried in Manhattan, in New York City. Here you can see Times Square, which some of you probably have visited and certainly know about. And on the one side, you see Times Square is full of cars and buses and trucks, and people rushing around the place. It's always a busy, bustling area. It's a fantastic place to go, by the way. At 3 a.m. at night, it's the same as 3 p.m. during the day, just full of life and energy. And I mean, right now, of course, New York City's been challenged, so it's not business as usual. But we're all confident that in time we will see life come back, and you know, the life as we would prefer, a world of non-pandemic return. But this experiment was, what would happen if we pedestrianized? What would happen if we took away the cars in Times Square for a few months? And so they ran this experiment. It was part of a sort of just a kind of a festival type approach, where there'll be some celebrations, and you know, it was just going to be a point in time, and then when it was over, the city would go back to having Times Square act as normal. And what you see is on the right-hand side, what happened when they removed the cars and the trucks, and you know, it brought life back to Times Square. People, rather than rushing from one place to another, or you know, trying to avoid accidents, they actually started to mingle and drink coffee and tea and meet friends, and you could see, if you went there at any time of the day, lots of different types of entertainment. And people loved it. The city loved it. Now, at first, the bus companies and the car companies were not all that excited. They thought it would become a major problem for them, because they would have to find alternative routes to get from A to B. But curiously and unintuitively, the data that I've seen showed that the traffic actually improved. It actually improved by having the vehicles get rerouted around Times Square. Now, the experiment turned out to be so effective and so successful that it is now permanent. So a great example of a major metropolitan area giving the city back to the people, taking the city away from cars and giving it back, and creating a place, what we call placemaking in the urban world. Now, here's another example of a big city problem that we have actually overcome. Some of you will recognize that this is the city of Los Angeles in Southern California, major American city, the home of Hollywood and all the movies and shows that so many of us watch. And if you went there in the 70s or 80s, you would notice that there was a great big cloud hanging over the city, and this was smog. This was a deadly potion of different chemicals and exhaust from cars and trucks and buses, and it looked terrible, and it was really bad for people's health. This isn't a place in the world where the skies are typically blue all year long, like it is where I am here just south of San Francisco. We don't get many cloudy days. And of course, the smog was blocking it all out, and it was horrible. But through ingenuity, innovation, and leadership, and a drive to make change, we introduced the catalytic converter, changed the way engines operated on all sorts of vehicles. And over time, the air cleaned up, and we largely solved this smog problem in Los Angeles. I have to say, though, we did not solve the traffic problem. One thing you can notice from this picture is when the smog was bad, which was in the 70s and 80s, you had a certain amount of traffic. But then look at the other side, when the sky is clear, we almost fixed that problem entirely, but the traffic has got significantly worse. By the way, Los Angeles has the worst traffic in the world today. And the mayor said, since they're hosting the Olympics, I think it's 2028, in 2028, they want to have the best traffic situation in the world. So they've set themselves out with a really important goal. So you can see, you're beginning to see a pattern here of big issues in our city context that they seem intractable at first, but they are certainly solvable if we apply ourselves with new ideas, and we have leadership step up. One of the great phenomena of our time, sometimes it's hard to see, is that we are in the beginning years of an energy revolution. For so long, the world has been driven by our overconsumption of carbon-based energy, particularly gas, oil, and coal. And we're paying a big price for it now. We're paying a price with our health, with the environment, and with the climate emergency. But there's been good work done to look at alternatives and to deploy non-carbon energy to meet the hunger, the desire we have for energy. It certainly, as our cities grow bigger and more of our life is consumed with electronics and digital experiences, we have to have a lot of power to power all of that. And so we're moving into a world where we are getting better at developing non-carbon energies, such as solar from the sun, wind, hydro from water, and thermal from heat underneath the ground. Even nuclear power is being innovated to be safer and a viable alternative. And in many communities, the transition to solar is moving forward quickly. Here's a picture of a town in Germany called Freiburg, and you can see they've went big on solar panel adoption. Many of these homes never pay electrical bill, and on really good sunny weeks, they produce more energy than they need, and they're able to sell it back into the grid and actually make money from producing power. Now, our cities are also ideal for digital transformation because of the existing infrastructure. One of the rapid growing areas is the deployment of sensors, or what we're calling urban sensorization. And this is deploying little internet connected devices all around communities to do things like air quality management, parking management, noise monitoring, traffic monitoring, and public safety. A whole range of things are being done with these little sensors. And the city infrastructure is very valuable because we have things like light poles, which are on most major streets in most major cities in the world. And those fixed assets are great for, appending sensors, and then they have power, and sometimes they have even connectivity. Both, by the way, are very convenient, but not essential, because first of all, these sensors can be powered by solar, and the connectivity can be wireless. So we just need the physical infrastructure, and then we can start to put up these sensors. And we're creating cities as a major platform for the Internet of Things, these little internet connected devices. And what we have to do, we basically have to retrofit a lot of our existing cities with new tools and new solutions, both utilizing existing infrastructure and creating new infrastructure. One example that I like, again, this is New York City, where there has been historically about 22,000 telephone booths. When people didn't have cell phones in the good old days, they would have to find a phone booth and put in coins and make calls that way. Well, of course, with everyone having smartphones and cell phones now, those 22,000 phone booths are no longer necessary. So they were replaced with all of them are being replaced. It's still a project underway with a thing called Link NYC, which is, for example, super free, high-speed Wi-Fi, digital signage, free telephone calls, emergency centers, and a whole lot more. So we're able to bring and intersect the physical and digital world. And this is part of the transformation of our urban communities. As we sort of look out further, we're going to see new assets in our communities, such as robots, right, which will do activities, in this example of this picture, security. So this is an actual robot in a real setting that's monitoring, security in a parking lot. It can also do things like monitor for open spaces, and be an information booth for people if they have questions. What our cities represent is this intersection of the physical and digital world. Our landscape will continue to evolve in the years ahead. Something we don't see a lot of today, but we'll see increasingly in the years through the 2020s and into the 2030s, is the emergence of drones. And drones will take the form of both on the ground, terrestrial drones, as well as flying drones, which some of us are already familiar with. And they will do all sorts of activities from deliveries. You can see this lady has got her lunch delivered by a terrestrial drone. This is not science fiction. These little Starship robots, it's a real company actually delivering food across America and a few European cities. And so we will need the regulations, the laws, the approvals to make this happen. And we'll have to get used to a different urban environment as a consequence of these emerging technologies. And we'll have a great debate about it. Some communities will push back like they do with all sorts of innovation, and other communities will embrace these things. It's been said that the most important technology of the first 50 years of the 21st century is going to be autonomous vehicles and autonomy just in general. And as a person who has experienced self-driving vehicles firsthand here in Silicon Valley, I can vouch that these are going to be a big deal, and it's all going to happen faster than you think. And when we start to have cars that drive themselves, we can think differently about how we design our communities. We may not need traffic signals. We may not need directional signs or even the grid system or lanes. There's a whole variety of urban infrastructure and urban assumptions that we can begin to rethink as a consequence of the arrival of autonomous vehicles. And by the way, these vehicles will be connected devices. They will be part of the Internet of Things. And just as this picture is illustrating, those vehicles will talk to infrastructure, infrastructure will talk to the cars, and the cars will talk to each other. I think within a few decades, we won't be thinking of cars the way we do today, as something you kind of sit in, 2 rows of seats all looking forward, but they will be literally moving rooms with all sorts of value-added services and experiences that are probably even hard to imagine today. And we can't hold back as we think about the digitalization of our world and our cities. We have to think boldly and big. We have to think big. And I never thought in my lifetime, for example, that I would see flying cars. I certainly didn't think I would be an investor in flying cars, which I am today. And we already see some communities experimenting with autonomous passenger drones. We've seen them in a number of cities in China. We've seen some experimentation in the city of Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. And we're going to increasingly see these flying passenger drones arrive in our urban environment. I don't think they'll be for everybody. Certainly, they'll be economically expensive for most, but they will become part of our urban infrastructure and change again how we think about transport, not only of people, but also of products and services. So there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of disruption ahead. We understand the motivations for smart cities and this digital transformation. We also understand the economic opportunity, $2.4 trillion by 2025, and it'll only grow from there. And we also understand the existential risks that if we don't address the challenges of our cities, the air will continue to get worse. The climate emergency will continue to deteriorate. More people will be hurt and injured and killed. And the earth will continue to warm up. What we really want are cities that are have a high quality of life, that are more inclusive, that really are about people and a great people experience. That's what I think all would aspire to, and it's all within our grasp if we make a series of important choices. And I always like to sort of wrap up my thoughts with a big question that you can ponder if any part of this presentation this morning has been interesting to you is, are you ready to help build the city of the future? And I certainly hope your answer is yes. Now, as I wind down here, if you have enjoyed this topic, or you've enjoyed listening to me speak about just a few of the challenges and opportunities, I want to share with you that I have a best-selling book on this topic. It only came out in July of 2020, so it's only been out a couple of months, but is a big bestseller, selling thousands of copies all over the world. And if you like the topic, if you're just curious to learn more, this is a good book for you. But if you actually work in cities, or you are delivering to cities, you are a provider, this is a book, a must book about how to do things. It's really a really thorough book on steps and actions that can be taken. It's not a book of theory. And yes, there's lots of talk about artificial intelligence and flying cars and blockchain and data and so much more. But it's also a book about people. It's about processes, and it's about IT governance, which is the central topic of the IT governance group here with Turkey. So I would encourage you to check it out. If you want me to send you a signed copy, which I'm doing, you'll see when you go to smartcitybook.com that there's an option for a signed copy version, and I'm happy to sign one and send it to you in anywhere in Turkey or in the Middle East or anywhere in the world. So please do check it out and consider purchasing a copy if you like this topic. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention. I'm going to hand you back to the team here so that we maybe can take a few questions. I am on Twitter, as you can see there. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me and ask questions as well after the presentation today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It was a big pleasure to hosting to you, and it was like lesson. I have noted it was a great presentation. Thank you so much again. There is just two questions I can ask to you. One of them, in order to build smart cities, we need more data, and how can we provide data security?
Yes. Well, one of the things that cities have in abundance is data. Cities are entities that are full of constraints. There's never enough money, never enough time, and never enough talent. So we live in this kind of this wild environment of constraints. But cities have a lot of data. They collect it, they store it, they use it as a part of the function of running a city. And so there's always lots. And if you need more, there's many ways to gather it through sensors, of course, and through digital interactions. Now, the question is, how do we secure it? Well, number one is we have to recognize that security is a primary concern. And it's not a secondary. It can't be something that we think about much later on. When we deploy systems, when we design these systems, security must be part of the architecture of it. So right in the beginning of the idea, as you move into discovery and then design and then deployment, we got to bake in appropriate levels of security. Fortunately, there is a lot of innovation in the cybersecurity space. We see lots of new tools, lots of very interesting ideas using artificial intelligence. Even blockchain as a technology offers the potential for security in the city context. We need more talent. We need more expertise. So we need cities to hire cybersecurity professionals and to work with cybersecurity companies. So I think those are sort of the main ideas here. Make it a priority is primarily the point. And also recognize, by the way, that that approaching security is what you call or what I would like to suggest is a risk-based approach. A risk-based approach. Not every system and every piece of data needs the same level of security. So, you know, if you have 100 things that you need to protect in some way in your environment, not all 100 will have the same needs. 2 or 3 might need the best, you know, the ultimate, you know, tight security, whereas another 60 need medium, and then there's a few that it doesn't really matter. There's not really a strong security requirement. So I'd encourage a real focus on a risk-based approach. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know, security is part of the conversation in IT governance. And so, you know, are you managing your assets? Are you managing your software? Do we have accountable people and a decision path? So if you have IT governance deployed in your city and you have an approach to security, you're in a better place than, you know, 98% of communities in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so
Jonathan,
much.
may I ask one question? And before that, I really appreciate for spending time with us and for your presentation. How do you see the future development of 5G? We know that after this COVID-19, even in England or the Netherlands, there are some protests against 5G, but we definitely will need for the IoT. And how do you see?
Yeah. Well, one of the big announcements yesterday was from Apple. Apple had their regular, you know, new products and services event, and the big story was they have 4 or 5 new iPhones that now are 5G enabled. So the smartphones are getting ready for this new, very fast, very reliable form of cellular wireless connectivity. So the momentum is clearly behind the implementation of 5G. There are many communities in the world that are moving forward rapidly. Some cities already have 5G, but the bulk of cities in the world are beginning their 5G journey. And by the way, it won't stop there. We're already talking about the design of the next generation, which is currently called 6G, sixth generation. So the train, as they say, has left the station, and our appetite for fast, reliable, and connectivity everywhere is with us. You know, in every generation and every time in history when a new innovation has emerged, people have not been happy and they've protested. You see that you know, with the emergence of the car. You know, people didn't want the car. When you saw the telephone emerge, people didn't want the telephone. And it's you know, on and on. We have had a tension and a dialogue in our societies about the innovation that we want, and our point of view on it. So 5G is something that will touch everybody in the world. It's of that scale, and we're going to get lots of different opinions, and we should listen to everybody, and we should have a dialogue, and we should be respectful of people's views. So those that are protesting against 5G, we have to respect them, and equally as they observe, you know, the vast majority of society want to embrace new connectivity. There has to be respect on that side too. I don't think that in the big picture, 5G is going to be held up. It would seem that there is proof that there's an enormous appetite, that the benefits for self-driving vehicles, for IoT, for medicine, for all aspects of our society are too great to not embrace it. I mean, none of us can think about a connectivity solution that when it was faster, we said, no, we don't want it to be faster. We always want it to be faster and more reliable and more available. If there are indeed health concerns, we should address them. You know, we got to be realistic and open-minded. But if the data clearly shows that there is little or no, there's no material health negativity to 5G. We also need to listen and use that information too. Nobody will force 5G phones or 5G devices on people. Now they may come to your community, but your choice of whether to buy a 5G phone or 5G watch or whatever device you have will be your choice at the end of the day. So if you are opposed to it, you certainly can push back. My view overall is that 5G is going to be a really big deal. It'll enable innovation and societal progress and elements of urbanization that we can't imagine right now and will be game changing. I imagine a world in a few years, maybe by 2030 or perhaps a little beyond, where everything will be connected. Everything will be connected. It'll be cheap and easy just to connect anything, any asset, any item. And so why wouldn't we do it? And so, you know, get informed on the topic, make up your own mind, but recognize that we're probably going to see mass adoption of 5G in the decades ahead.
Thank you. And Jonathan, one last thing that in mind, what's your expert view on? Do you think some countries have a competitive advantage for implementing these kind of technologies? And which country do you think is, I don't want to put it in a competition perspective, but which country is leading right now towards that?
I'm sorry for cutting. Also, Kerem, there is one question from the India.
Sure.
We can add this question to this question. Also, their guest, what's your opinion about the Saudi Arabia smart city?
Sure. Yeah, happy to.
It's related.
So it's hard always to answer the question, you know, what cities ahead and being successful with their smart city efforts. Part of the reason why the question is hard is because, first of all, we don't have a good definition overall. You know, we know it's about applying technology for better workability, sustainability, and livability. That's sort of a way of thinking about this. But the smart city efforts of any community are really a reflection of that community. What's important to Istanbul and Ankara and Cairo and Tel Aviv, or, you know, and et cetera, what's important to these cities may not be important to others. So we need to look through the lens of like what's important for this community and what's working for this community. Now we can look at areas like transportation, like who is, for example, ahead of the curve in terms of adopting electric vehicles, or even what communities have lowered their carbon emissions, what are adopting more solar technology. There are ways of kind of taking these big buckets of metrics and measuring them. But there's also another one, which is what cities are super focused on using technology and really get that we have to reinvent how we deliver our cities. I think that's an important metric. Like you can have all the technology in the world, as you guys know well, and still see no benefits if people don't believe in it and you see no leadership. So there has to be belief and leadership. There has to be vision. So I would say that there's some obvious outliers. The city of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, you know, it's I go there often. It's like flying into the future. I mean, it really was built from the ground up to be a smart and technology savvy city. I look at Singapore, again, small, but it's a city-state nation that is so focused on efficient services and education that they've really used that to propel their success. In many Scandinavian countries, like there's cities like Helsinki and Copenhagen, there has been a early recognition of the value of for example, alternative transportation, light rail, the use of bicycles, you know, digitalization of services, more smartphone apps, more web-enabled interactions with government. You see some nice leadership, for example, coming out of Melbourne, Australia, where they really have focused on quality of life, focused on things like waste management and transportation, and efficient services and digitalization. So you see these kind of behaviors. We are very much at the beginning of the journey. So there's great opportunity for cities to be leaders in all shapes and sizes. So if there was a competition, it's going to last a decade or so, at least until we see who the clear winners are. But it's not a competition, as you say in your question. I think we all should be focused on a higher quality life for as many people as possible. The couple of last thoughts on this. There are some countries that have made their smart city missions a national goal. For example, India a few years ago identified 100, now it's 121 approximately, cities that would be, again, super focused on smart city services and, efforts to modernize city functions. That's a project that's underway. Many of these projects are impacted by the pandemic and by the economic hit that they've taken, but we should see that all resume. China is notable for their modernization efforts, the creation of greenfield cities. So you see some of the most rapid smart city developments in China. Now, the final question was, or that I recall, was what about Saudi Arabia? I've been really impressed. I'm doing a little bit of work with them, and I'm impressed with their sort of Vision 2030. The Saudi Kingdom is very much looking towards a future where they're not dependent on oil entirely, where they diversify the economies, become more tech savvy, so there can be more tech businesses, more healthcare, and even open the country up to tourism, which is still small today, but could be worth a fortune to the kingdom based on the incredible country it is and the amount of wonderful historical things to see there and do there. Now, there are a couple of, there's a handful or so of completely new cities that are happening in Saudi. You see the amazing city proposal of Neom. That's N-E-O-M. Neom is around 25,000 square miles of pristine oceanfront and desert in the northwest region of the country. And that is going to be an autonomous region for that really focuses on a completely new quality of life, from education to healthcare to industry to recreation. So very impressive. Will probably be the biggest construction project in the world within a few years. Really great work being done in places like Al Medina, where they want to upgrade systems, but also have a greater focus on smart tourism. And so I'm pretty optimistic about the Saudi Kingdom's efforts. There's the right leadership in terms of what needs to happen. There's a vision of 2030 and beyond. So if you have the money, the vision, the momentum and the ideas, a nice combination of things should produce results.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jonathan. It was great to listen to you, and definitely we highly recommend to check the Smart Cities for Dummies, and hopefully we will get a copy with your signature as well, signed one.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
And Can Tekin, would you like to add anything before we close?
Yeah, I added. Thank you so much again for your kind attendance, Jonathan.
It's my pleasure.
So hope to see you in Turkey as well in the future after this COVID issues. Yeah.
Definitely.
And definitely we will do a physical webinar, not the webinar, but the seminar, hopefully in the future. So
Yes.
see you all. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much, Jonathan, for being with us.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
All the best.
Thank you very much also our attendance.